Now, did anyone notice anything odd about that clip?
No sound!
Well, how about we play the same clip over again, but with sound? Now, which one did you like more? The one with sound or without sound?
With sound.
Hello, my name is Niko Olsen, and today I will talk about the history of sound in film. Over the years, the process of sound being implemented into film has greatly enhanced the viewing experience for all to see and hear. Sound in film only started with two machines being played simultaneously, and now we're mega theaters with sound coming from all corners. I will be exploring the history of sound in film from where it started to where it is now. I will also include a trailer from Marvel Studios' 2018 film, Black Panther, mixed to be used with different sound effects created by myself in a software named Pro Tools. It will then finally show a reflection of my work. On February 27, 1888, Edward Muybridge, a famous photographic pioneer, gave a private lecture to Thomas Edison. Muybridge proposed the idea for sound in cinema 6 years after the first commercial film was released that would combine Muybridge's invention of the image-casting zoopraxiscope and Edison's invention of the phonograph. After that meeting, Edison and Muybridge did not reach a conclusion. The two of them shared different beliefs, where Muybridge thought that sound in film should be projected to audiences, while on the other hand, Edison thought that sound in film should be viewed by only a single person. Although, within a year of that conversation, Edison had started the development of the kinetoscope. The kinetoscope was first commercially used in 1894, where for only 25 cents, you could look into the kinetoscope and see a short film. After making this, Edison later came to the conclusion that Muybridge was correct in his idea of projecting film to a larger audience.
Is it? Oh,
Okay.
yeah, there you go.
Sorry. In 1899, a new sound film system was invented called a cinemachronograph, or the phonorama for short, made by Swiss-born inventor Franz Dussaud. It was first exhibited at the Paris World Expo. It was similar to the kinetoscope, but this system required the individual use of earphones. Also around this time, two men named Clement Maurice Gralouet and Henry Lauret of France created an improved cylinder-based system called the Phonocinema Theater. At the Exposition Universelle, the phonorama, the chronophone, and the Phonocinema Theater were all presented for all to see. It was a very big time in motion picture history because this was the first time commercially that motion pictures and sound and film were brought in front of 50 million people. Speaking of which, did anyone in the audience attend the 1986 Vancouver World Expo? Well, fun fact, it was actually run by the same people who ran the 1900 World Expo. So, the more you know, I guess.
So point it right at the computer and press it deliberately.
There you go.
No, this goes back. Okay. Although going through this path, there are definitely some problems for sound and cinema. And the main problem was syncing the sound and dialogue to the movie without being noticeably off. They'd turn two machines on at once and just hope it syncs up on time. The second problem with sound in cinema was that the better motion pictures were more ideal to upgrade than the addition of sound. Therefore, while the visuals may have looked good, the sound quality was poor. The third problem was the challenge of recording fidelity. The primitive technology for the time during this era produced very low quality sound. The last problem was that sound engineers could only record up to 5 minutes of sound, which of course limited content. In 1925, Western Electric and Bell Telephones created a new sound-on-disc contraption called the Vitaphone. When salesmen showed the Vitaphone to possible buyers in 1925, they were disinterested and would prefer to stay with their own sound-on-disc technology. Though one smaller studio at the time, called Warner Brother Pictures, accepted this offer. In 1926, Warner leased the sound technology from Western Electric for $800,000. Later in that same year, Warner Brothers wanted to test out their new sound technology by having a $3 million grand opening for their new musical Don Juan in a refrigerated theater, as shown in the image right here. Don Juan was a major success that had critics calling it the eighth wonder of the world. As Warner was at the peak of its success, sound engineers were worried about the future of sound once again. Since the structure of making sound was changing, that meant that the entire economic structure of sound would also have to change to readapt sound. This meant that new sound studios would need to be built, new expensive recording systems would need to be made, theaters would now have to be wired for sound, and now that you could hear the actors' voices, dubbed versions of movies were still developing, limiting movies using different languages. Even musicians that found fame through Hollywood were getting laid off and replaced by virtual orchestras. For these reasons, Hollywood hoped that sound and film would live on. In May of that same year, Warner Brothers began the production of a film called The Jazz Singer. This originally meant to be a silent film with Vitaphone musical accompaniment, but Al Joel, the actor, added in dialogue that Warner kept in the final version of the film. In one scene, Joel adds dialogue while he sings to his mother. To a silent film with title cards. That scene and one other before it were, surprisingly, the only spoken dialogue in the film, though the impact it left on critics and viewers of the film was astronomical. This is the first time you could see an actual drama unfold in such a realistic way. By 1929, all studios in Hollywood had a contract to use some type of sound system. Warner Brothers was still the leading company in the industry of sound and film movies. At the end of that year, 75% of all films being produced had sound. At this time in history, sound and film had overtaken silent films. Within the span of 2 years, all of entertainment had a major revolution and an estimated cost conversion of around $300 million. This is more than 4 times the evaluation of the entire industry shortly beforehand. But over a short period of time, the investments that dozens of studios made were paid off in the end, having audiences flood theaters as soon as the new talkie came out. Because of this, Hollywood was able to survive the Great Depression off their great profits. If it hadn't been for the Vitaphone and Warner pushing it so much, most of the big Hollywood studio names you hear today would have plummeted and not survived the Great Depression. You can not only say that sound and film enhances media, but it also saved it at the same time. Now you're 1, 2, 3. Keep on going. Theaters in the 1950s were looking for a new way to draw people out of their houses. In 1952, a new type of film was created. It was called the Cinerama. It was a widescreen new format that used 3 strips of 46-degree field of view. These theaters had 7 speakers wired in, 5 behind the screen and 2 behind the audience for surround sound. Fox later improved the Cinerama with a CinemaScope. Once the 1960s had rolled around, the main method of adding sound to film was using a 35mm film with optical monotracks. Going forward, sound technology was progressing, and very soon, one company was going to change the entire film industry that would be a crucial part of the theater's sound. Back in the 1930s, when companies rushed to wire their theaters with sound, the method they were using had poor quality sound that could hurt your ears. Sound mixers would use a method called Academy Curve. If there was a theater that was wired poorly, sound mixers would use Academy Curve to make the bad quality sound easier on your ears. Although, you wouldn't be able to hear the highs and lows of the film. This also added a hiss that you could easily hear, but masking the hiss does not prevent it from going away. As the sound industry became more complex in the 60s, sound mixers would have multi-track recordings, but this was a problem because you could hear the hiss in all the tracks, making it even more noticeable. An engineer named Ray Dolby had a solution to the hissing problem. By splitting up the input signal from the microphone, he would then apply compression before recording the sound to a tape medium, Then you would pick it up, then you would do the opposite and decompress what the tape medium picked up for it to be played on a speaker. The resulting noise you'd hear was a lot better than before. He called it the Dolby A, and in 1966, it quickly became the standard to reduce the hissing noise altogether. The Academy curve method, as shown in the image there, was replaced by the Dolby X curve.
Did I go too far?
In 1976, Dolby had created a new method called the Dolby Stereo. It had its first big showcase in 1977's Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, that did pretty well at the box office. After these two digital sound system inventions were made, new competitors to Dolby appeared. They were the DTS and the SDDS. That stands for Sony Dynamic Digital Sound. DTS premiered with Jurassic Park. It was similar to Dolby, but the digital data was stored instead on the film's time code. The SCDS premiered The Last Action Hero. It was again similar to the others, but the digital data was stored on the edges of the 35mm print. Moving even forward, all the sound would be embedded into a file, which it still is today. What critics and industry insiders thought was a short-living pipe dream to have sound in 1927 is now, according to Steven Spielberg, half the picture. Now, almost a century later from when sound and sound effects were being implemented into film, sound effects are a crucial part to any type of entertainment. It'd be odd to hear a movie without the boom when needed, or walking footsteps when they should be there. Sound effects today are used in almost all types of entertainment, including movies, television shows, music, podcasts, radio broadcasts, video games, live performances, and even more types of media. Beyond sound effects, sound in general has greatly advanced. Today, through good software, you are able to have up to 16 channels of audio playing at once, which is more than 4 times the amount of channels you could have in the late 70s. Even in Japan, sound engineers from NHK have created an 8K projection with 22.1 surround sound system, which is 3 times what theaters would normally have 2 decades before. But that being said, this is quite new technology, and you wouldn't find this in your local theater. Speaking of which, Dolby's newest home sound system, the Dolby Atmos, has sound that is produced all around you. It can now move in 3-dimensional space. Quote, "It moves like it would in the real world," says Dolby. Even free software you can find, like iMovie, is truly superior to technology we had 50 years prior. Instead of the process of making and producing sound effects and dialogue through a handmade method, like sound effects artists did 100 years ago, people today use software that you can purchase through your computer. On these applications, you can not only mix sound into a timeline is what you call your whole piece. You can also change the pitch of the sound, fade it in and out, add different tracks like sound effects tracks, stereo, mono, and a bunch of others as well. On the internet, there are hundreds of software to choose from, but one of the better ones, in my opinion, is called Pro Tools. Pro Tools, owned by Avid, is a popular sound mixing program that lots of studios and musicians use. It is quite intricate and difficult to use at first, but if you understand the basic functions of Pro Tools, it can be very enjoyable. Today, I will teach you some of the basic functions of Pro Tools. So as shown in the layout here, I'll be going over the zoomer, the trim tool, the selector, the grabber, the scrubber, the pencil, and the pencil plus. The zoomer tool, like the name of the function, for this tool is to zoom in or out of a certain section on your timeline. It can be very useful to zoom in and take out a small tick in your timeline. It is also used to put your sound effect in the exact right place. The trim tool, again like the name of the function, is to trim off excess audio or video content from the beginning or end of an existing piece. If you download a sound effect from online or from a sound bank and you only want the first part of the sound effect, then you can trim it down in Pro Tools. If you recorded something and you want to take the start or end out of what you recorded, the trim tool is what you want to use. With the selector, or selection tool, you can highlight a certain area of audio or video piece. You can play the small highlighted area over and over as many times as you need. The grabber tool is simple. What you do is you grab an audio or video piece and drag it across the screen. It is identical to the selector's second purpose, except for that it can only drag one piece. The scrubber tool plays the audio clip you have selected in slow motion. Then in slow motion, you can look for a mistake you made if you were recording. It isn't often used, but is useful when needed. The pencil tool is a fun tool to use, where you draw over automation or MIDI data. You can change how high the pitch of the audio is going to be, and if the original clip wasn't loud enough in one area, you can draw over it to make it louder or quieter. The Pencil Tool Plus is in addition to the Pencil Tool, where if you don't want to draw the line, then you can choose a list of already selected lines. Sometimes they are necessary to use. And now that we've learned how to use the software, let's take a look at my Black Panther trailer that features some custom-made sound effects I made in a professional sound studio.
I've seen men build weapons that I could even imagine. I've seen enemies drop on the sky. I've seen anything like this. Which one have I had?
Don't freeze. I never freeze.
I'm waiting by this fight like this. The war's gonna start over. I'm gonna burn it all. But it's now. Determine what happens to the rest of the world. Let's have some fun.
Beginning, sound being implemented into film successfully was only a dream, something you may have thought humans would not be able to do. The sound industry, as we know it, all started in a workshop at the end of the 19th century with two engineers, and is now something that millions of people have as an occupation around the globe. The story behind sound and film is an incredible one. Lots of small changes that happened a long time ago were crucial for sound to still exist in film today, like how this film industry got through the Great Depression. Technology with sound is far greater than it ever was. In fact, in some sound software, a computer can now dissect all the dialogue from a scene, even if music is playing over the actors and actresses talking. It's something I found handy in Pro Tools when making my Black Panther trailer. Looking back at my trailer, I found it interesting how, like the rise of sound and film, I too had lots of setbacks, whether it be a website not functioning properly or software bugging out, though those problems did not stop me from finishing my mission of completing my trailer. It was a stressful yet fun journey, researching and creating sound alongside film. Will I pursue this passion in the future? Well, only time will tell. Thank you. I'd like to thank my faculty advisor, Scott, for helping me add and edit to my Masterworks paper. I'd also like to thank my external advisors, Justin Alcoyne and Adrian Jurek, for also helping me on my progress on my Masterworks. And a special thanks for Justin to answering my emails with my trailer when I had trouble with it. Additionally, I'd like to thank Jen, our Masterworks coordinator, for also helping me and allowing me to have an extension at the end when I needed it. Thank you to my mom and dad for helping me set up meetings with Justin and other small things.
Mr. Olsen, well done. And I want to clarify, you did all of the sound edits for that trailer?
Yeah.
That's incredible. So, yeah, another round of applause. Yay. questions to your advisors and then to the floor in our online audience. So go ahead, Scott.
Mr. Olsen, that was fabulous. I appreciate the way you were able to navigate that complexity of sound at the beginning. Nice work on that. So, having been with you throughout this process, I know that lots of things evolved for you and came into focus as you went through it. And what I'm curious about is, as you worked with Justin and Adrian and you got into a professional studio, if there was a moment where you sort of had a big aha or something really clicked for you to understand, maybe it was to do with the software, maybe it was to do with sound and engineering in a broader sense. Did you have an aha moment when you were going through your Masterworks?
Well, yeah, because when I was by myself and I was checking out the software, I didn't know what single thing was. I was really confused, and then when I had my meetings with Justin, he kind of taught me, and I kind of learned as well I was going as well, where, you know, it's kind of intricate, like I said at the start, to understand, but if you like understand a couple functions, it gets easier to know, and then I was able to finish the rest of it by myself, and with some help with him through email, but I guess my aha moment would be working with him in his studio.
Okay, thanks. And I do have a question from Justin here as well. But Jen pointed this, and when you showed me, I just saw it for the first time and heard your production that you put together in Pro Tools yesterday. But I think it would be great for the audience to get a better sense. So I'm going to ask if you can, I'm going to put the projection back on here.
Just let her get all.
Yeah, sure. I'll just pull that off then. And I really think, audience, you have actually no idea what is embedded under this Black Panther sound clip that
Are you
he's
playing
done.
the sound clip again?
I'll just play some clips.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So let me go back to projection here, and you can show us a little bit of the, like maybe pull up that moment and take us through a little bit of a play-by-play. Maybe you showed me yesterday where the wheel was coming off the vehicle, and talk us through what you did to create that sound.
I'll give you a couple examples. So, the flipping of those pages, I got a novel that was just on his desk, and I went right up to like the microphone like this, and I flipped the pages as you would with a real book, and it kind of actually sounds like it would in the real.
Can we hear it again now that we know you were flipping pages?
Sure. So you can just like imagine someone flipping pages. This is what Foley artists do all the time, and sound engineers do. It's hard to hear over the music, but I was flipping pages, and then right here, that was me having two small kitchen knives, butter knives, and you just put them up together. Like, slice them.
So again, could you maybe show us that
So,
one again?
like the last one, you can just imagine someone right up against a microphone, like I was, and doing those same actions.
Great, and then thank you for that. Really helps us to understand what you're doing. And then could you also show us your timeline in Pro Tools right now? Or is it not possible maybe?
I don't think that'd be
Okay. Because when you showed it to me yesterday, I was pretty amazed that so many different lines and tracks, and really very, very complex. So bravo to you for doing that. So here's a couple questions from Justin. Number one, how was your outlook, or how has your outlook on sound production changed after completing the project? Great. Okay, thanks. And I do have a question from Justin here as well. But Jen pointed this, and when you showed me, I just saw it for the first time and heard your production that you put together in Pro Tools yesterday. But I think it would be great for the audience to get a better sense. So I'm going to ask if you can, I'm going to put the projection back on here.
I just need to get to it.
Just let her get all.
Yeah, sure. I'll just pull that up then. And I really think, audience, you have actually no idea what is embedded under this Black Panther sound clip that
Are you
she's
playing the
done.
sound clip again?
I'll just play some clips. That
Yeah.
Perfect.
So let me go back to projection here, and you can show us a little bit of the, like maybe pull up that moment and take us through a little bit of a play-by-play. Maybe you showed me yesterday where the wheel was coming off,
Yeah.
the vehicle, and talk us through what you did to create that sound.
I'll give you a couple examples. So, right here, with the flipping of those pages, I got a novel that was just on his desk, and I went right up to like the microphone like this, and I flipped the pages as you would with a real book, and it kind of actually sounds like it would in the real.
Can we hear it again now that we know you were flipping pages?
Sure. So you can just like imagine someone flipping pages. This is what Foley artists do all the time, and sound engineers do. It's hard to hear over the music, but I was flipping pages, and then sure, right here, that was me having two small kitchen knives, butter knives, and you just put them up together, like slice them.
So again, could you show us that one again?
Like the last one, you can just imagine someone right up against a microphone, like I was, and doing those same actions. Yeah. So.
Great, and then thank you for that. Really helps us to understand what you're doing. And then could you also show us your timeline in Pro Tools right now? Or is it not possible? Maybe?
I don't think that'd be possible.
Okay.
Right now.
Because when you showed it to me yesterday, I was pretty amazed. There's so many different lines and tracks, and really very, very complex. So bravo to you for doing that.
Thank
So
you.
here's a couple questions from Justin. Number one, how was your outlook, or how has your outlook on sound production changed after completing the project?
At first, I didn't really know much about it. I was just researching, maybe thinking that it was a generic story, but looking at it, it kind of has something that a real story would have, where it has conflicts, it has setbacks, and I see it a lot more interesting and something that is, it's really cool to learn about the history of it, and
Nice, okay, thank you. And then number two, what was your favorite aspect of post-sound? I'm not sure what exactly that means, but he's written it, maybe you guys talk about that, but the post-production of sound, I guess, on the film? Your favorite aspect of it?
It's a little hard to say because I don't really understand the question.
Yeah, let me see if I can break it out a little bit more. So as you were working in the studio, was there some particular thing that you really enjoyed in there? Was it creating your own sound? Was it using maybe sound you pulled off websites or?
Yeah, I had like using your everyday vegetables to make cool sound effects. It's so cool because it's something you never expect, right? You never think that celery could be used for a fighting scene.
Did you use a variety of vegetables or any? You used macaroni and carrots as part of your Black Panther trailer. Yeah, okay. Great, well, we've got some, thank you. That was it from this.
That was awesome. I think I read in your paper that when you crack celery, it's like breaking bones.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, I love that. So, where did you use macaroni?
Kind of like squishy gut sounds. I mean, I didn't use it for that, but we did a couple other small things where I used that for. But yeah.